welcome everybody. Jay Weiss Live, Jay Weiss Marketing Production. And again, we're going to be talking to a local business owner here in Houston and get all the details, and we'll get with him here in just a moment. But first, before we start, as always, we want to thank our sponsor, Advantage BMW Midtown, Philip Hart, Southwick, and those guys. Good group of people. Anything you need BMW when it comes to parts, sales, service, anything you need, go see those guys at Advantage BMW Midtown. They'll take great care of you, treat you like family. They got everybody to help you out, from buying the car to learning about all the features of the car to servicing it, everything. You want to get your car modified in any kind of way, they'll do it. It's a first-class operation. So Advantage BMW Midtown, thank you guys so much for making this possible. We really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
So today we are doing a mold business introduction. I told Christopher when he came in, I said, this is the first time I think I'll ever, first time in my life I've sat down and talked about mold for more than 5 minutes. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, luckily you weren't affected by the hurricane.
I guess that's the blessing of not having to have gone through that, because I haven't had any of that incident, at least that I know of, and maybe I do, and we'll learn about it today.
Absolutely.
To see if that happens. But first thing, just introduce Christopher Felan. Christopher Felan, he is a licensed mold consultant, moldinspectionhouston.com.
Yes.
So licensed mold consultant.
Yes.
Okay. So we start off with you. So tell us a little about yourself, Christopher, and what your company, what you guys do.
Sure. Again, my name's Christopher. I'm married to Rosie.
Okay.
And we'll be married 22 years next Friday. So
congratulations.
about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
I've got 2 sons. One of them is a senior, Corey.
He's sitting right over there.
He's sitting right over there.
What's up, Corey?
He's a senior at St. Thomas
Okay.
High School. And then I've got a 6th grader, Ryan, who is my second son. I have 2 sons at St. Vincent de Paul.
Okay.
Over there in Westview, I guess.
Okay.
And
you're raising these boys, right?
I'm trying to. It's not the easiest thing.
I know it's not the cheapest either.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
But yeah.
And Corey looks like he likes to eat.
Yeah, he's a big boy. And, he big football player there at St. Thomas.
Good.
Yeah, he's doing great.
Very good.
But yeah, so started Mold Inspection Houston Platinum Environmental Solutions about 6 or 7 years ago, and have been doing mold inspections, asbestos surveys, various other environmental consulting services, and things have been going very, very well.
So Platinum Environmental Solutions, what's that in relation to the mold inspection?
That's the parent company.
Okay.
And then Mold Inspection Houston is kind of a DBA under that.
Okay. So it's basically doing the exact same thing.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. I guess just tell us about you and how you got into this. What?
Sure.
I don't know. I always want to know when someone gets into a mold inspection business. How you
About 10 years ago, a buddy of mine said, "Hey, you want to work for an environmental consulting firm?" And I said, "Hey, I don't know anything about the environmental."
Yeah.
And he said, you have the right degree. So I came back to Houston from San Antonio and got a job at a place called Malcolm Perney,
Okay.
Environmental Consultants, and that was quickly bought by Arcadis, which is a worldwide conglomerate. So I did soil sampling, water sampling, reporting, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did some asbestos oversight. And at the time, the state of Texas, asbestos, mold, and lead were all governed by the same body. That's no longer the case. But being involved in asbestos led me to get a license in mold consulting.
Okay.
And since I had the degree and was on my way to finishing a master's degree in environmental toxicology, it was just natural to be a mold consultant and an asbestos consultant.
Okay.
So once I had those 2 licenses, I decided to go out on my own in 2012.
Okay.
And did my first work in the very early parts of 2013.
Okay. When you're in college and you are taking classes, deciding what it is that you want to do. First off, where was it that you got your undergrad?
I went to the University of Texas at El Paso to start, so I did most of my work there.
Okay.
And then I finished here in Houston at Texas Southern University with a bachelor's in biology and chemistry.
Okay.
And then I turned right around and got a master's in environmental toxicology there at Texas Southern.
Wow. Okay. When you're at UTEP, then how do you say, okay, I want to get in environmental sciences?
Oh, I had no idea I was going to be in the environmental game until 2008, 2009.
So
Okay.
how'd that happen?
How did that happen? I mean, I thought I was going to do something in the medical field, and that didn't work out. And I was working for a developer in San Antonio, and that's when I got the call from a buddy with environmental consulting.
Okay. So what was your undergrad then at UTEP?
Oh no, it UTEP and TSU, it was biology and chemistry.
Okay. All right. Biology and chemistry. Okay. So it wasn't really necessarily anything environmental. It just came to be
Correct.
that way.
Right.
Okay. So then you said coming back home to Houston. So are you from Houston originally?
Well, I lived in Houston before, went home to San Antonio for a few years, and then came back to Houston.
Okay. So are you originally from San Antonio?
I am originally from San Antonio, but my father was in the military, so
Okay.
I lived in Alaska, Hawaii, Virginia, and Texas.
Wow.
You were in the military too, weren't you?
I was.
What branch?
United States Army.
Real cool.
I was a medic in the United States Army.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. How long was that?
4 years, right
Okay.
out of high school. Had no money for college, so the GI Bill helped me pay for the undergrad part.
So that's what you do. You got out of high school, did immediately that, and then after that, then you started doing
Yes.
the UTEP thing. Okay,
Yes.
all right. So you say you wanted to do medical, right? I mean,
Right.
whenever you started at UTEP.
Early in my life, yes.
Okay, all right. So you go work for this company in San Antonio, doing the environmental. I guess you said like soil collection and
Right.
research.
That happened when I got back to Houston. But yeah, I used to do like soil samples, working with environmental drillers, water samples in like contaminated creeks and stuff like that at chemical plants and things of that nature in Shreveport, Austin, Texarkana, Metairie.
I'm sure there's a ton of that going on behind doors.
Ab-
Stuff just getting polluted and corroded and torn up.
They're just trying to clean it up as best they can, and we do all the sampling and the testing, and then people above my pay grade would do the reporting, and then we would try to do the remediation.
Tell us about a horror story that you've seen before.
Well,
without saying any names.
Without saying too much.
well, I can tell you that this city boy, I was in Texarkana in the woods in a creek, and the guy that was giving me the guide was behind me, and it was about an 8-foot dry creek covered with vegetation. And all I remember is him grabbing my belt and saying, "You don't see that?" And it was a huge snake about 5 or 6 feet in front of me to the right, and I did not see it.
I'm out
And
on
he's like,
that.
"You know what? I'll lead."
I'm
But
out on that.
things like that. I mean, I really enjoyed being in the woods, but man, when you get down into it dirty like that,
Any horror stories related to corrosion or messed up waters or anybody
No, I
getting
mean-
in deep waters, getting in trouble,
no,
crazy stuff?
nothing like that. I mean, the place in Texarkana that I worked at was an old ammunitions plant, and it just was contaminated with things like benzene and different VOCs, volatile organic compounds, and it was just all a matter of finding it and trying to get it cleaned up.
That's cool. Well, I'm glad you didn't have a lot of horror stories from Houston.
No, not
Makes me feel a
Yeah,
little,
yeah.
I feel a little bit safer.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're out there and you're doing these collections and you're, what are you in? What is your get up?
Oh,
that you're
I mean,
in?
it's steel-toed boots, jeans, and a shirt and a vest and a hard hat. But when you get into like other things, like later in my life, when you're doing asbestos oversight, then yeah, you're having to go inside the containment or and look at the abatements, and you have to put on the full suit and the mask and all that kind of stuff to be careful.
Okay.
But I've been part of some major demos and major cleanups when it comes to asbestos. But asbestos, mold, lead, they're all grouped together, and it's all led me in the last 10 years to where I'm at today.
Is asbestos as bad nowadays as it used to be? I know.
Well, there's still over 700,000 buildings in the United States that have asbestos in them. So, you think that you've been removing it for 10, 15, 20 years, that you've made a dent in it, but it was so overly used back in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s that we'll be testing for asbestos for many decades to come.
So I've heard asbestos before, obviously, but what actually is it? What is it? Why is it so bad?
Is a fiber that comes from a rock that is in building materials like insulation, fireproofing, mastics for glue, joint compound. It could be in a dozen different things. But the best thing that it was used for was a fireproofer. So they would spray it on the beams of the buildings of these high rises. But when it's dry and it's cut, it turns into a fiber. And if you inhale that fiber, your body won't pass it. So that's why you get asbestosis, you'll get mesothelioma, things like that. And that's what causes people to get sick, because instead of passing those fibers, your body will encapsulate it and try to, protect itself from it. And that's what causes all the diseases.
So how long was that on the market before they figured it out? It hurt you.
40, 50 years. Wow.
That's just terrible.
They're spraying it in the Navy ships. It
was everywhere.
It was everywhere. Absolutely.
No telling what they're spraying now that they'll find out in another 20 years.
The crazy thing is that we still make it and ship it overseas.
Wow.
So it's such a great fireproofer that, it still has, if it's used right, you can use it, you can
use it outdoors.
You can outdoors. Yes.
What are we using now as opposed to asbestos?
I do not know. It's got to be non-asbestos material fireproofing. You're using VCT tiles without asbestos in it. You're using like a yellow mastic for glue down carpets, for glue down VCT, and Cove base. They're just using products now that are glues and don't have asbestos in them.
Okay. You are working for these different companies, and then you're moving on to go on your own. What made you take that step? What was it about it?
I guess when we were bought by Arcadis, my company was bought by Arcadis. I don't think I fit into that mold of that corporate mold.
Okay.
So I went to my wife and said, "Hey, I think I want to go out on my own," and she thought I was crazy, but I stuck to my guns and I said, "Honey, I think I really, really can do this." So it was really scary for the first 4, 5, 6 months, but after that, it took off and it took hold, and you do the right thing, you do the inspections right, and people trust you, and once you get to that second level of, hey, I did a project for Peggy Sue, and then she tells Angie, and then Angie tells somebody else, you're in that second level, and people begin to trust you and know you're going to do the right thing, and get them a fair, honest report of, hey, you either have mold or you do not have mold.
Well, I've known you for a long time, and you've always done legit business, honest business. You know your shit, and that's the service that you're providing people. I know that there's a lot of people in this industry. Well, there's not a ton of people in it, but the ones that are in it are almost like ambulance chasers, where they're
there's definitely a couple of those, and we try to stay away from them. But and then you've had people after the hurricane that doubled their price, which
it was ridiculous.
That was just quite unfortunate.
Well, speaking of the hurricane, I want to thank you for coming out to my neighborhood at the time, Riverstone, out in Missouri City. You really helped out a lot of our neighbors, and I appreciate that.
I think I did about 300 houses in Riverstone. Riverstone was one of those few neighborhoods it didn't flood because of the hurricane. It flooded because of a faulty pump from this water area to this water area.
Yes.
Every house got a foot of water in it.
And I don't know if you know that, Grant, or not, but Chris is the one that I called when we were doing a lot of the recovery work out in the neighborhoods. Okay. And after the water went down and people started getting on the phone, he came out and took care of the whole entire neighborhood.
Yeah, that was quite a project. I wasn't as intimately and over the project as Johnny was. Johnny was a lot more involved with it than I was, but I helped out where I could, and I can imagine when you're in a situation like we would go into homes and people would just have no idea what to do. Really for me, if it happened to me, I really wouldn't have known what to do other than getting everything up that I can. But I can imagine how having somebody that does what you do and gives an honest estimate and assessment, how valuable that can be.
In a flood situation like that, where you're coming into a house that had a foot of water into it. You know, most people know by the time I've gotten there, hey, 4 feet of sheetrock, because the sheetrock is sold in 4-foot increments. Take out the cabinets, take out the stand-up shower, take out the toilet, take out any of the flooring that is not tile, because the tile usually is directly
applied to the concrete.
Applied to the concrete. So 9 out of every 10 houses that I got to, that's what they were doing. So I was checking the moisture readings on the studs, and 9 out of 10 they were good, and I would test them. There was one situation where I got to a house in Riverstone where she still had some hardwood floor and she still had her cabinets, and I said, "Ma'am, you're not ready for me." And she kind of looked at me like, "No, I want you to test it." And I said, "Ma'am, you're going to fail." And I said, "My life is going way too well to know that you're going to fail. Charge you the $500 and come back in 2 weeks." I said, "Listen, you need to do A, B, and C. Here's my card. I'll come back when you're ready, because right now you're not ready." And she was very appreciative. She had those 3 or 4 things done. I came back, tested it, and she was fine. And that little thing right there, I ended up getting the whole block, like 12 houses.
It just goes to show you do good business.
I'm telling
word
you.
spreads.
Like I told her, my life was going way too well. And I was doing 8 or 9 houses a day. I was exhausted. I said, "But listen, you're not ready. So let's get you ready, and we'll go from there."
Are you still seeing effects from the hurricane?
Oh,
today?
absolutely. Now we're getting to the houses that have not been touched. So you have contractors coming in, gutting them, trying to encapsulate them and get me to test them. Yes.
Are those ones that were vacated at the time?
Yes. You'll have like an elderly couple that's been moved out of there, and they're moved somewhere else or to a nursing home, and that house is just sat there for sale by owner. And
that's got to be scary.
It is kind of scary.
I can't imagine having a house that sits that long, what it's like in there.
Oh, yeah. I've been kind of acclimated to a mold smelling house, but I've been in some where I can't spend more than 5 or 10 minutes in there. It gets so bad.
Well, I'm in the car business, and we would have cars that would come in with water in them, and I've had them before where they're really bad. So I can't imagine what it would be like in a home.
Like in a house that all the windows and the doors have been closed for 6 months or a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really bad.
When you made the move to decide that, did you see a vacancy in the market here that needed some injection of somebody like you?
You know what? I wasn't that complicated. I just knew that I loved what I did with mold and asbestos. And I said, I want to do it for myself, and I think I can make a living at it.
Okay. So it wasn't like a market research where you looking at it and saying,
"Oh, no, I was nowhere near that smart."
No. You just went into it and said, "I'm going to do it and see what happens."
I was trying to do it by myself.
Yeah.
And a buddy of mine, I have 2 buddies, Corey DeBerdino and Josh Wiseman, who happens to be Johnny's brother. And Josh, I went to Josh, who was a small business owner, and I said, "Hey, man, I'm trying to get this off the ground." And he says, "Hey, you need to talk to my brother Johnny." And I'm like, "Why do I need to talk to a club manager for?" The guy was managing a club at the time called The Sanctuary on Washington. I said, "What the hell do I need to talk to Johnny for? He manages a club." He's like, "Man, that's not what he does."
Yeah.
So I went and sat down with you. I think that's when I met you, maybe in 2000.
Was that 13 or 14?
No, it was 12. It was before we launched the website.
So we launched what?
So it had to be like no. It was before that. I mean, I don't know, maybe 2000.
I'm sure it took us a couple months to build it. So we launched first quarter of 2013?
I think so. Yes. So I went to talk to you, Johnny, and laid it all out. And the one thing I remember is he said, "Hey, you're going to spend $15,000 with me this year." And I thought to myself, I don't have $15,000. You want to know what he told me? "You can pay me in payments."
Hey, that was back when I was cheap.
Yeah, exactly.
$15,000 a year.
So you explained to me what SEO is. You explained to me what the pay-per-click campaign was. And we started the PCC. And things just took off from there.
So just for the audience, you started that year. We started beginning of 2013.
Yes.
What did you gross that year?
About 165,000.
First year in business. High five. Bam.
Yeah, I was absolutely thrilled.
I bet.
So
Well, you've done amazing since, so congratulations on all the success.
Thank you so much.
Well,
Absolutely.
like Johnny said, when you have a service that you are transparent, that you're honest, and you take care of your customers and good customer service, and you're knowledgeable, and I mean that and you have the software and the technology to do it. I mean, you can do pretty much anything.
I totally agree. I mean, I've always tried to be upfront with people, and I think they really, really appreciate it, because in this day and age with social media and, with all kinds of rating websites like Yelp and Angie's List and things like that, you just try to do your best to satisfy every client and explain to them what's going on, what's not going on. Hey, I'm going to test you. It's either going to be mold, it's not going to be mold, and if it is, we can help you this way.
I can't imagine how many people out there have just no idea what to expect in a situation. I mean, it's one thing if you're trying to do a remodeling of a home, or you're trying, like, some people have some general idea of that stuff. I would imagine a huge majority of people have no idea anything about mold, what to look for, what to do with it, nothing like that.
Yeah, just like you said in the beginning, you've never talked about mold more than 5 minutes of your life, and most of my clients don't either. They don't even know that they need a mold inspection.
You don't think about it until you have a problem.
Exactly, and not everybody goes into their house and looks at their ceiling to see if there's any kind of water leak or any kind of discoloration on the vents or on the registers, things of that nature. But most of the time when I am called to do a mold inspection to come out, it's the most that they've ever talked about mold in their life. And, I just try to educate them and walk them through the inspection process. And if you do have it, then we can help you with the remediation process as well.
Well, and speaking of education, what is mold? And is there a difference between when people refer to mold versus black mold?
Well, let's start off with mold versus mildew. That's one of the biggest questions. And mildew is usually, it's a fungal growth, but it's usually white, and it doesn't release spores into the air. Where mold takes three things to exist. It needs a food source, temperature, and moisture source. And it is going to release spores into the air, whether it's alive or dead. One of the funniest things I hear in the field is, oh yeah, I've got mold, but it's dead. Well, it's releasing spores just like live mold would. And to get to your question about mold and black mold is a mycotoxin that is toxic. And the scientific name for it is called Stachybotrys. And black mold comes from a fresh water source, so a leaky pipe, a leaky roof, or an HVAC pan that's dripping the wrong way onto your sheetrock. Not once in my career have I ever seen black mold on an HVAC vent. That's always a different kind of mold, like Cladosporium or Penicillium aspergillus. Those two molds are more common, and they also grow naturally outside, but you should not have them growing in your AC system. But black mold, we just did a case in Midtown with black mold, and she had a roof leak into her master bathroom closet. And I walked in, I looked in the ceiling, it was all black. And she's like, you think that's mold? I said, I not only do I think that's mold, but it might be the wrong kind of mold, because it gets really, really dark and it comes in splotches. So black mold is pretty dangerous. It needs to be contained when it's removed. And it's something that we take very serious.
For those that don't know, alive and dead mold, what is that?
Sometimes you have a mold growth, and then the water source is cut off, and then the mold just sitting there, and it's not growing anymore. So that's more of a dead kind of mold. Whereas you always have that continuous water source, and that mold is on moist sheetrock, and it's just continuing to grow. So, and it's hard to tell between live and dead mold, but it's
so for people in their houses that might see, mold, or think they have mold, or have some allergy issues, and not, is it always visible?
Mold is not always visible. There could be a water leak behind your wall that is dripping for 6 months, and it has not protruded through the sheetrock yet, but there definitely could be a lot of mold in
It's on the inside hiding.
On the inside.
On the other side of the paint.
Yes.
So how would you know then if you have it?
Well, we take air tests and or swab tests.
That's when Chris Felan comes in.
Well,
with
you know, I mean,
Houston
you
mold
gotta,
inspection.
you got to have some way to know, to have an idea of to call somebody like
right.
you.
Well, sometimes clients have symptoms that they're not used to, that their environment is changing in their house or their business. They're sneezing, they have watery eyes, they have congestion, slight headaches, things like that can
that they've never had before, and all of a
Right.
sudden it happens.
Right. So you walk into their house and there's like everything looks fine, and then you look up at their vent and you see black splotches all on the inside of the vent, and then you can say, hey, look, there's mold in the HVAC system. So every time that HVAC system is cut on, whether it's for air conditioning or heating, the air gets blown through the ducts and it passes that grill and it's blowing mold into the house. So seeing it, you know, 2 times a month.
Wow.
So,
well, if somebody wants to check, if they're having those symptoms, they don't know if they have mold, what does it cost to get a mold inspection?
Here in Houston and in the vicinity, a mold inspection will run you $295, and that includes a inspection, assessment, and a report. Then we charge $75 a sample, and the first air sample is taken outside to set the baseline of the control, and then any additional air samples, of course, are taken inside the property.
And how long does it typically take to get those results back?
The next business day at night. So,
oh, wow. So not even 24 hours.
Well, sometimes,
Or
you know,
within a day or two.
A day. If the inspection's done on a Monday, you'd receive full report, lab data, copy of my license on Tuesday night before midnight.
And tell me about those $5 mold test kits that you can buy at Home Depot.
Oh. Those kits, they're the Petri dishes. You can put those anywhere in your house. You can put them on top of your refrigerator. You can put them in your bathroom. You can put them on your nightstand. They're always going to grow mold because the environment always is going to have mold spores in it, outside, inside. They're just
so they're always going to say you have mold, and you just wasted $5 or $50 or whatever they
right.
cost.
You can buy them for $5, and then they charge you $45 for you to send them to a lab.
Yeah.
But they're always going to have mold in it because all air has mold.
So if you really want to check, contact somebody like yourself to come out and do a legit test.
A licensed mold consultant like myself, come out, walk the property, look at all the ceilings, look at all the vents, decide with the client, hey, we're going to run air samples here, we're going to do a swab sample there, take those samples to a lab, have them analyzed by a microbiologist. I get the lab data back, and then I write the report.
Good to know.
So when you're saying you're a licensed inspector, those certificates. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Licensed mold consultant.
Yeah, licensed mold consultant. How do you get those certifications besides your schooling that you did?
Right. You have to have, I believe, in the state of Texas, you have to have a bachelor's degree in earth science or one of the earth sciences.
Okay.
And then you go through a 40-hour course that's taught by a licensed educator here in the Houston area. I mean, they're statewide.
Okay.
And you pass his course, but then you have to pass the state exam, which is not the easiest.
I can't imagine.
I mean, so I took the state exam in Austin and passed it on the first try.
There you go.
Then you wait for your license, and then of course you have to be insured and bonded.
Yes.
And you go from there. So you buy some expensive equipment to run the air tests, and pick the right lab, and I went from there.
Okay. All right. So your lab work is done at another facility, and they give you the report.
Right. I send all my samples to a private lab here in Houston, and then they spit out lab data and email it back to me the next day.
Okay. All right.
Real cool. Well, one last question that I had before we get out of here is related to killing mold and getting rid of it, eradicating it, or remediating it, whatever the proper terms are.
Sure. And
how do you kill it, and how do you prevent it from coming back?
Oh, let's start with an HVAC system. When something like that happens, you call a certain company, a licensed mold remediator. you would never want to use some sort of HVAC contractor that does the mechanical. They're not properly trained on how to clean AC systems when it comes to mold. So you call a licensed mold remediator. He'll come in, take all the ducts off, run some air scrubbers in your house, and clean the ductwork, clean the vents, and then gain access into the attic and open up the air handler and clean the plenum. That's how you take care of mold in the HVAC system. If you had a water leak behind a desk or something that you hadn't seen, again, a licensed mold remediator would come into the room and put up a plastic containment from floor to ceiling, cut out the sheetrock, and if it was a leaky water source, you want to, of course, address the plumbing issue or the leak.
Sure.
And then you want to put a dehumidifier in that area to dehumidify or dry out the studs of the wood, and then run an air scrubber in there as well. And an air scrubber just recycles the air through an air scrubber through 2 HEPA filters, which gets rid of the mold that's in the air. But it's all about drying out, letting it dry, and then encapsulating it with a Kills or another product right next to Kills, which is called Mold Killing Primer by Zinsser.
We saw a lot of that going on during the hurricane.
A lot, because I was trying to spread that word. Hey, you got a foot of water, you need to encapsulate this wood.
I think everybody in Riverstone know who Chris Felan is.
Yes. You know what? I've made a lot of friends from Riverstone.
I bet you have.
Well, again, thanks for coming out there.
No problem. I really appreciate the opportunity.
When we were talking earlier about the best way to test for mold, you were speaking about a CMDR.
A CMDR is a certificate of mold damage remediation. And if I come out to your property and you've had a remediation done and you've gutted the house to 4 feet of sheetrock, all of these studs are dried, everything's cleaned up, and I run some air tests inside and, of course, a baseline outside, and they come back clean, you can earn a CMDR certificate. And the CMDR certificate is actually a document that is from the state of Texas, the Texas Department of Insurance. And there are 3 boxes on the CMDR, and I'm allowed to sign the bottom box because I'm a licensed mold. I'm a mold assessment consultant.
Okay.
So I sign it, date it, and give you my license number, and that says that certificate says that at the time of the inspection, the house was free of mold. And it pretty much gives the go-ahead for the contractor to move forward.
Okay.
When people are selling their house, these realtors are now asking for their certificate.
Okay.
I was going to ask you about that. My wife's a realtor and has a brokerage here locally, and a lot of people want, especially after the hurricane, everybody wants to sign off on that the house doesn't have mold.
Exactly.
So are you doing that as well?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
great.
So we're doing a lot of inspections for realtors to run the air samples inside the house. We open up all the cabinets and things of that nature to make sure that the house is free of mold and make sure that these contractors did not put the house back together too soon without letting it dry out.
Okay. So if someone's going to say they are free of mold in their home, they've got to have that.
Correct. And this will tell you that at the time of the inspection, that I did the inspection, that the house was free of mold.
Okay. The question I have, I guess, I don't know if we've addressed it or not, but the mold, as far as your health, like what can mold do to your health?
Mold is what we would call an acute sickness if you're getting sick from mold, and it's something that's happening right now. Congestion, headaches, runny nose, watery eyes, those are just a few things. And it's because that there might be mold in your environment, whether it's in the HVAC system or it's in the, you have a moldy bathroom ceiling that you're really not addressing. But no, those are some of the symptoms, and you want to take care of that as quickly as possible. Whereas asbestos is a chronic disease that takes 20, 25, 30 years.
Okay.
Those are the two. That's the difference. Mold is very quick, and asbestos takes a very, very long time.
Okay. All right.
Well, thanks for all the info.
Yeah.
No problem.
I learned a lot today.
I did
I've
too.
known you forever, but
I did too.
I think I learned more in the last hour than I have in the last several years of knowing you.
I did too. There's a lot I didn't I wasn't aware of, didn't know, and I hope people that are watching and listening have learned, because I know I have. Before we get out of here, any last words that you want to say out there for people that are watching, listening?
Well, if you're buying a new house, especially in this day and age, and you even have a question that the house may have flooded 1 inch or 1 foot, you probably want to get a mold inspection.
Very good.
Well, and next week next month when we bring you in here, I want to talk more about the real estate and some other things related to the mold and Platinum Environmental.
Absolutely.
For sure.
You can definitely do that.
Well, Christopher, thank you. It was nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
I'm glad you came in and
you.
sat down with us and talked, and I look forward to learning more about it, for sure.
Where can people find Christopher at?
People can find Christopher, first off, phone number, 713-446-9737.
That's correct.
Okay. You can also check him out online at moldinspectionhouston.com. Very nice website. Looks really good.
Thank you, Grant.
You're welcome. It's obviously worked out well for him. So, yeah, it's been a great website. So, just again, 713-446-9737, moldinspectionhouston.com. Christopher Felan, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. We'll see you next month.
All right,
Take care.
sir.
Take care.
All right.